Ackley House in Nyack, New York history. Haunted houses, ghost stories, and paranormal activity. Usually these subjects are relegated to legend or lore, but there's at least one instance of such a subjective, not to mention difficult to prove topic finding a lasting place in the legal canon. The first house to be declared legally haunted in the United States is a short 10-minute drive across the Tappan Zee Bridge over the Hudson River from Sleepy Hollow, the birthplace of the legend of the Headless Horseman and Rip Van Winkle. The house in question, the Ackley House, is located at 1 Levita Place in Nyack, New York, and is one party in the seminal trial Stambovsky v. Ackley, colloquially referred to as the Ghostbusters ruling. The fact that a home was ever deemed legally haunted is surprising. The fact that it's right near Sleepy Hollow and that it's a Victorian may be less so. Is there something about the region that makes it particularly susceptible to otherworldly visitors, or is it just a coincidence? And just how haunted does a house have to be for a court to recognize it? Read on for our investigation. 1 Levita Place and the Ackley family lore. Levita Place is an especially coveted cul-de-sac in the commuter town of Nyack. Built in 1890, the 3-story clapboard Victorian at number 1 is constructed of horizontal wood paneling. It's set back behind a front lawn and elevated above the river with gorgeous views of it from almost every room and window. It features a charming turret, a picturesque wraparound porch, and a fenced-in pool. Inside, there are 8 bedrooms and 4.5 bathrooms, but despite the spaciousness, the home was designed to feel homey and comforting, with nooks and intimate, smaller spaces carved out of larger rooms throughout. Some of the period details include stained glass windows, hardwood floors, and elaborate moldings. Little is known about the early occupants, though according to interviews with local residents, it was likely home to a family that is still in the area until it went unoccupied for about a decade in the 1960s. So what went so wrong? Fortunately, 1 Levita isn't the site of any highly publicized murders or tragedies. Instead, rumors of ghosts can be traced back to a mid-1970s Reader's Digest article called Our Haunted House on the Hudson, written by resident Helen Ackley, wife to George Ackley and mother of 4 now adult children. In it, she wrote about the family's many ghostly roommates while they lived happily in the home. Sabrina Toto for Dark House. Both parents experienced some hauntings. Most notably, George swears he saw a pair of disembodied moccasin-clad feet walk by him from the hallway above the staircase he was standing in, while Helen witnessed a man emerge in colonial or Revolutionary War attire while she was repainting the entryway. Daughter Cynthia, who was in high school at the time, was awakened daily by something shaking her bed until she politely asked the room to let her sleep in. What may sound alarming to most was actually welcomed by the Ackleys. They felt as if all the spirits were friendly, so they grew to consider them part of the family. But even before they moved in, neighboring children believed the house was haunted, saying, "Lady, you know you just bought a haunted house, right?" when Helen first arrived. Fast forward to 1989, about 25 years after the Ackleys moved into 1 Levita Place and 15 years after the article was printed, solidifying its haunted reputation, and Helen was ready to downsize. So she decided to list the house with Richard Ellis of Ellis Realty. The home was listed at just under $800,000, and Helen was thrilled when a young couple, Jeffrey and Patricia Stambovsky, were eager to get the contract underway. Sabrina Toto for Dark House. According to both Ellis and Cynthia, Helen did in fact disclose the haunted nature in a few passing conversations. If you ask Ellis, he remembers even her refusing to sign her end of the contract before having a conversation with the Stambovskys about it, while the Stambovskys claim they found out about the local folklore through a contractor, and that they wouldn't have wanted to buy the property had they known. Jeffrey has always asserted that he doesn't believe in ghosts, but he does believe in the market and that other people who do believe in ghosts can impact it. What is the Ghostbusters ruling? Because these interactions weren't properly documented, we'll never know for sure what the Stambovskys did or didn't learn about through Helen and Ellis. Regardless, Helen was notified that the Stambovskys wanted to pull out after she'd received the down payment, and filed an action against her for fraudulently misrepresenting a material condition of the home, i.e., didn't mention the ghosts. Stambovsky also argued that all of Helen's stories devalued the property, but the court initially dismissed the complaint and said that Helen did not have a duty to disclose the haunted house stories to the Stambovskys. This is because the state of New York operated under caveat emptor, which translates to buyer beware in Latin. Translation: it's the buyer's, not the seller's, responsibility to do their due diligence and ask every question they may have concerns about before purchasing a property. In that ruling, the judge explained that there are already enough roadblocks and players in homeownership between the appraiser, contractor, agent, and more, so adding a clairvoyant to the list is just another complication. Sabrina Toto for Dark House. Unsatisfied, the Stambovskys appealed the decision, which brought the case to the New York State Supreme Court. Justice Rubin disagreed with the former dismissal and was joined by two other judges to form the majority opinion that the caveat of buyer beware should be set aside in this context because the defect isn't a physical one. This is to acknowledge that things like a crime or a reputation based on past occurrences in a location can devalue the market value of the said stigmatized property, and thus should be disclosed by the seller. Additionally, by openly promoting the folklore to the press and the community, Helen could not deny or change that folklore under oath. Specifically, the court wrote, having reported the ghost's presence in both a national publication and the local press, defendant is stopped to deny their existence, and as a matter of law, the house is haunted. As legal scholar Eric Goldman explained it to us, Helen owed the Stambovskys that same level of promotional effort because of her conduct before the litigation. Goldman went on to say that he doesn't believe the court was really thinking about setting a new precedent. I think the judge has looked at this as a one-off type ruling, trying to come up with a solution that was equitable and fair for both parties. So, what became of the home? One Levita place has since changed hands frequently, with Ellis saying maybe it's because of the energy there, considering that it's unusual for a property like this to change hands so frequently. Yet he also thinks it's not important to disclose a perceived haunting. That said, none of the subsequent owners have reported any ghosts, some of which have been notable public figures. In the 1990s, filmmaker Adam Brooks, who co-wrote the screenplay for Practical Magic, lived in it. After him, Ingrid Michaelson lived in it until she sold it in 2015, at which time the house was listed for $1.9 million. She didn't blame ghosts for leaving, and in fact never mentions anything about the paranormal nature. Another resident was musician Mattis Yahoo, who lived there for 4 years until 2019.